capacity building, we don't talk about capacity retention. You need to create an enabling environment for that capacity you have built to function. If you train me as a doctor, and the facilities are not there, you want me to spend 5 years doing nothing? These are some of the things. So we must create that enabling environment for people to stay. My generation stayed because I had something to work with. You think I would have stayed in Nigeria if the country, I mean, you mentioned the time when people used to come to UCH from outside the country. If the situation was not like that in Ibadan, Lab where I was working, I mentioned to you, I used to go to local government and do those. If that situation was not there, you think I would have stayed? I wouldn't. So I don't blame all those who are leaving. It is not patriotism or lack of patriotism. You create that a brain will drain to where it can be nurtured, and that's what is happening to us. Before you give that law to say stay for 5 years, you must create the environment for the person to work. If he doesn't have a place to go, no electricity, no hospital, no what is he doing in the 5 years that he's going to stay?
Yeah.
So you solve that problem first. You can't pick out just one group and say you must stay. Well, there are other people who are leaving the country. Engineers are leaving, nurses are leaving, people are leaving. It's not just those. How many of the young people are going out of this country? How many of them? IT experts. If you don't create that enabling environment, generally, people will not stay. So let the law go for all of us in every aspect. Then we can then come and solve all the things together. You can't pick out just one group and say you must stay.
And that's where we'll start off our conversation today. The health sector, healthcare delivery, and how to curb the brain drain in that sector. It is said at least 2,000 medical personnel leave Nigeria on an annual basis. That's coming from the Nigerian Medical Association. But why are they leaving? And then that conversation around the bill that's gone through the second reading at the House of Representatives to help to curb the brain drain. What will make the difference? Is it a search for greener pastures, or is it a search for an opportunity to practice what they've had to study? Well, we'll find out more about this as we start out. And we have in the studio here the Chairman, House of Representatives Committee on Healthcare Services, Dr. Yusuf Tanko Sununu. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Thank you. And he's also the past National Secretary General of the Nigerian Medical Association, so he would really have an understanding of how the system works. And joining us virtually is Dr. Osao Enabulele, who's the president of the World Medical Association and former president, Nigerian Medical Association. Dr. Enabulele, thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Nigerians. Good morning, channels.
So let's start here with you, Dr. Sununu. This bill, I mean, that's like in the health sector, right? And that's the conversation that everyone's talking. That's what everyone's talking about right now. What prompted this bill?
Well, thank you very much. First of all, let me thank you very much for re-inviting me after a very long while, and then also to thank Nigerians for still having confidence in our progressive Congress, and we're grateful that we are elected to also lead the country for the next 4 years. And we do hope it will be better because we have an experienced people that can make a difference, and we do hope that the confidence reposed in Nigeria will justify it. Now, you see, we must understand how lawmakings are done so that we limit the way we express our anger. You see, lawmaking is about identifying a gap. And every lawmaker will try to identify where is a gap and how can he perform to address such gap through a lawmaking. Now, the sponsor of the bill realized that doctors are leaving in mass out of the country for greener pasture and for other reasons. And then he found that the only way we can do is to salvage the situation by trying to see how Nigeria can retain its specialists and also doctors that were trained. His approach was that he sponsored a bill. Now, every member has the right to present a bill to the National Assembly for consideration, subjective to the approval of Mr. Speaker or the Senate President, so that it can be deliberated open. And this was done and it was granted. And it has passed the first reading and second reading, and it has been forwarded to committee. Now, the committee is an avenue that has been created to harness experience from public, stakeholders, and what have you, so that they can come and sharpen the thinking of the particular lawmaker so that the gap can be appropriately filled. It doesn't mean that once it is presented, it is going to pass for the third reading and it becomes a law.
I'm sure a lot of Nigerians know that already, yes. But the question is, why even begin to think in that direction about suggesting or proposing that those who have studied for 5 years will not be given their license?
Now, if you ask me the content, I will tell you that the content, now going personal, I'm a medical practitioner and I've trained as a specialist. And also, I've been a medical activist over time. Until date, I try to see that whatever we do, we justify services that we're going to render to Nigeria. Now, if you look at it, there are a lot of issues. What are the main issues that made people to move out of the country? And one of the respected professors I've just had, Professor Tomori, made it clear. You see, there are, if you try to summarize it up, people think it's just the greener pasture in terms of financial aspect of it. Nevertheless, not that. There are people who are just don't want even because of that. But there are reasons. One, you see, job satisfaction is something very important. For example, I'm a trained gynecologist. There are many surgeries that I've learned. But because the environment cannot provide avenue for that, I only read them in the literature and I've gone. Trying to put it into practice may even risk the child, the life of the this thing. You understand? I am also a trained subspecialist in minimal access surgery, laparoscopic surgery, which I know and I've been practiced. But I know the challenges for me to practice as a minimal access surgeon. You need, at times, you can stand for good 12 hours operating on a patient. Continuity of electricity is very, very unpredictable. At middle of the surgery, when you are trying to control bleeding, light will go off, and your monitors that you are doing, because you are using television to operate just like video game. You understand? So you don't know where to go. Now, at a certain stage, you must say, okay, let's just abandon this and continue with our normal conventional surgery. You know, there's no job satisfaction there. If you look at security, now the security has made the brain drain, internal brain drain. You know, if we are talking about medical practice, we have to look at external brain drain and internal brain drain. Has further worsened the situation of internal brain drain. Because what is internal brain drain? Most of people, a lot of practitioners from the south are moving away, creating vacancy. Now, a lot of practitioners that are based or resident in the north are from the south. Now, with this creation of this vacancy in the north, they are driven toward the west, towards the south. You understand? Thereby creating more vacancy there. So you understand? If you also look at it, that's the issue of insecurity, and nobody will feel secured. You find that there are people who are even from the state that are really they are in need of their services, but because they are not secured there, they can have to move. Now, everybody wants his future, and your future is directly, the future of your children are also directly related to your own future. So because there is no enabling environment in most places, whereby your children can attend better school in rural settings, you can access banking services and other issues, because of absence of that, people also don't see that even in a state where you have more doctors, they can move to rural areas. Just go take an example. Lagos State has the largest number of doctors in Nigeria. But you can go to some local government in rural areas, you cannot see doctors because there is no enabling environment. So in totality, what is needed is to see how can we address the issue. Now, in saying that you are restricting a medical practitioner for 5 years after this, I'm just talking, I have to mention my own personal experience as a practitioner. We have issues. In medical practice, we have classification. Now, if you retain me for 5 years with provisional registration, which by law is supposed to expire after 2 years. And then within that 2 years, you are expected to have completed your housemanship so that you move to the next level, you go for your NLSC or you obtain your full registration and get your exemption and continue as medical practitioner. Now, within that 5 years, what categorization are you going to give me? Am I going to be still a senior house officer or what? Which even before that we have it, you have your full registration and become a senior house officer, but that has also been, by civil service, it has been scrapped. So you see, the issue is, what was needed is to see how we can have stakeholder engagement so that we can have a better law. And then just some few days ago, I had a discussion with special advisor to His Excellency, Mr. Vice President, on the outcome of Presidential Health Reform Committee. How do you go about it? All this issue of brain drain, we have brainstormed, we have identified the cause, we have found the short-term means of addressing them, and we have also looked at the long-term means of addressing them, which definitely the prohibition of the act, the bill we are dealing with, cannot address such. And what we have discussed, how do we have a holistic approach so that the compendium that had been gathered, how can we transform it into a law that can be transmitted to the incoming regime so that we can have a working document?
So if I understand you clearly, the person who has proposed this, the person who has sponsored this is not exactly a member of your committee. Is the person a member of your committee?
No, it's not a member of my committee, but you don't need to be a member of any committee.
I know. I just wanted to, it also helps if somebody understands whether or not, because some of the questions you have raised now about this particular bill, talked about if you're not going to be granted full license, under what categorization, etc. One would have thought that, okay, in thinking about this bill, if the person had a medical background or was a member of your committee, perhaps he might have just, spoken with a few members before the drafting of the bill.
The member that sponsored the bill,
yeah,
he's one of the people that have health and healthcare services in mind. He has sponsored a motion on the need to improve the welfare package of healthcare workers, including medical doctors in Nigeria. So it is in an attempt to go forward on how we can address issues that probably he thought of that bill.
I'm not questioning his passion.
Yes.
I'm just saying, I'm wondering what his background, because sometimes, yes, you have passion, but sometimes you have to ask about knowledge as well. So now that this bill is before your committee, from here, where precisely is it going to?
You see, now that I'm just saying, I've just said some experience as a practitioner. You understand? But as a chairman, Healthcare Services Committee of the House of Representatives, the bill that is before committee is for us to listen to general public.
So it's going to public hearing now?
Yes, that's go to public hearing, and people, a bill that has attracted so much discussion and attention like this one cannot just go like that and we just discuss it and throw it away without getting the input from the general public.
Has a date been slated for public hearing?
Immediately it was this, we are on break now for the Salah, and this we are coming back on the 2nd of May, and as soon as we come back, the bill will come to the committee and definitely will call for a public hearing immediately. And I am sure we have a proactive speaker. Anything that generated interest, we give it a fast track so that everybody will be rest assured that what we are taking is the decision of the people. You remember when we have the infectious disease bill, I've been in this studio several times so that we can discuss it. So those are the historic bills presentation, and this one was also among them that have attracted the attentions of Nigerians. Because if you look at it, the bill is not only talking to medical practitioners, it also involves parents. Parents have sponsored their children, some within and outside the country, and they have spent so much money to sponsor them. Yes, I agree that there's support from government in training, but the training exceeded what is needed. Because if you act for the cost of training materials, books, and others, parents shoulders that, except in some certain state that pays scholarship, and even the scholarship cannot cover 800%. So now you are telling parents, and parents are agitated. I've received so many calls. What happened to awards? What of my child that has just finished and is going for, is about to go for NYC? Do you think he cannot go because I listen? And if you keep him for 5 years in my house, who pays him? And at what grade level are you going to pay him? You understand? So these are questions they are really challenging. You understand? But as I said, lawmaking is a process. You can come up with a bill that people thought is a very, very bad one. But because it's going to be subjected to public opinion, people who the House itself, the National Assembly itself, general public will panabit it and come out with the essence that is very important that can assist the country. But however, where it is rejected by the general public and the House see no reason why to also carry it forward, it will be rejected. We have done so many bills, we have turned down so many bills, and we have passed many and several bills.
So let us bring in Dr. Nabulile here. Dr. Nabulile, you have been through, or you've been at so many levels in your profession, in your career as a professional medical doctor. Right now, you are President World Medical Association. This is after you were President of the Nigerian Medical Association. I'm sure that you must have received this with some reaction, and I'd be very interested to know, precisely what crossed your mind when you came across this bill.
Nice to see you again, and of course, I also want to appreciate the presence of my good brother, who is making us proud, Honorable Tanko Yusuf Sununu. I want to first say that, to be fair to Honorable Tanko Sununu, I believe he understands clearly the fact that this is one bill that really would, if you want me to be, with all due respect, a blot, what I consider a blot on the escutcheon of the House of Representatives. Because this, honestly, in as much as all representatives have rights to, formulate bills, but the kind of bill formulate also we tell the kind of quality, the character, and of course the whole essence of, that chamber. So I think there's also room for us to reflect and say, look, do we make use of our research abilities? Do we make use of the resources available to us? So that when you come up with something at such a hallowed, within the presence of the House of Representatives, that, look, this is for serious business. I think this bill, seriously speaking, and I've made my comments, preliminary comments on this, was ill-advised. I mean, it was, not well thought out. It clearly was unresearched. Clearly is one bill that we should not be talking about going to the public hearing. Because if it comes to the public hearing, I wonder how the House of Representatives will carry its face at the end of the day, because clearly it shows that from even the statistics read out by the House of Representatives member who sponsored this bill, he said they will have less than 10,000 doctors in Nigeria. That clearly flies in the face of the reality. And of course, the figures that were even projected by the Medical and Data Council as far back as 30th December 2022. So where did they get these figures from? Where did they get, I mean, this is not to say that we do not appreciate the passion with which he tried to push it, but he obviously was offering a cure that was even going to be worse than the ailment that he sought to, of course, address. Clearly, the issues of brain drain are well known to us. For over 2 decades, we'll be talking about these things. So I expect that all he needed to have done, at the very least, is to even Google. And you'll see all the challenges that have led to this, burgeoning brain drain phenomenon. And this particular brain drain phenomenon is more preeminent in African regions, Nigeria inclusive, where they have failed to address what we call the push factors. Now, there are a lot of factors that are pushing physicians and other professionals away, not just doctors. There are many other professionals. That's why, again, I felt that this bill was very discriminatory. I mean, it was very selective, and of course, in contradistinction to the provisions of the 1999 Constitution of Nigeria, which clearly does not allow this level of segregation, this level of exclusivity, and this level of discrimination. So there are push factors that are pushing Nigerians away from Nigeria, not just doctors. Today, we're talking about the whole issue of insecurity. That is enough to push anybody away from Nigeria. I mean, if you have to be very honest with yourself. But again, within the professional presence, we're looking at the whole issue of indecent working conditions. And Honorable Tanko Sununu has very well adumbrated on this, very articulately, and I commend him for that. He knows it because he was Secretary General of the Nigerian Medical Association. So we still have places in Nigeria where people are just working in what I consider rodent-infested environments, insecure environments. The other day we heard of a doctor was, murdered in the course of attending to his clients, his patients. How will that kind of family feel? There are people who are kidnapped in the course of their duty. You pay ransoms, huge ransoms to the kidnappers. Nobody assists you. Even the government turns a blind eye to it. And when you are recovered, how do you expect that physician to feel? So the issue of security, the issue of violence, the issue of poor recognition of even what the physician does in Nigeria, these are issues. And of course, the uncompetitive wages. Today, we all know that Nigerians are living, obviously, in one of the worst era, worst periods ever, with due respect, in terms of how the economy has impacted on their well-being. Doctors are included in this. Nurses are included in this. Pharmacists are included in this. And other professionals, and indeed, ordinary citizens of Nigeria. So there are clear issues that needed to have been engaged by, the member who raised this issue. And Africa today is worse hit by the whole issue of brain drain. And that is why it astonishes me, because the countries of the global north are doing everything to attract the healthcare workers from Africa, from low, middle-income countries, because they don't also have enough, because they are not producing enough. So the countries that apparently are producing, including Nigeria, are not able to even put on ground effective, pragmatic, and dynamic retentive mechanisms to retain their workforce. They are happy losing these workers to other economies. But again, I think we need to have a comprehensive approach to, of course, dialectically assessing the whole issue of brain drain again. I gave kudos to the then president, the military head of state of Nigeria, Babangida. He was one person who understood that there needed to be a comprehensive approach to the issue of the brain drain phenomenon. It's not new to Nigeria, it's not new to the world, it's not new to Africa. But what is strange is that in spite of the cornucopia, the evidence available to us in terms of the whole issue of the factors pushing our workers away, we have not been able to get the necessary relevant organs of government to realistically, transparently address these issues. Unlike the House of Representatives member, that is one issue, that is one area I would like to give him kudos. At least he recognizes that this is a major challenge. But there are some government officials who told Nigerians that we had more than enough doctors in Nigeria. Which flew in the face of the reality. So I think for me, there is need for us to understand the issues, and then from there, more realistically engage with stakeholders. Importantly, the relevant health professional organizations, including the Nigerian Medical Association, to look at how we can once again reappraise these issues and present more purposive, more progressive, and more enduring solutions to the issue of brain drain. Thank you.
Okay, so let me ask you what precisely you think needs to be done now. Do you think that this could be an opportunity to have this conversation? Because some people will say that, yes, this certainly was going to be a very controversial proposition, a very controversial bill. But do you think that it could then provide the opportunity to bring to the fore again, however late in the day it is, the issues affecting the healthcare sector, and perhaps maybe something good might still be able to come out of this, regardless of how it is started?
Yeah, thank you very much, Bakwe. You see, my worry with this is that we do not need to have eternal conversations. The conversations have been done. The resolutions are known to us. The blueprints are there. It's just like the case of the National Confab, of which I was a member in 2014. I was amazed as to the cornucopia of resolutions, the passepartout for the resolution of many problems of this country. But yet, government after government ignore the resolutions of such, very dynamic, very inspirational, congregations. What has happened to 2014 National Conference resolutions? Substantially nothing. So we have resolutions that have been taken on how to reform Nigeria's health system. You don't need to emplace any more, conversations or convoke any more panels. All you need to do is to go please dust off those resolutions and then see how we can even enhance it and then provide the resolutions towards addressing brain drain. So we don't need eternal conversations. Honorable Tako Sunono just stated now that last year or thereabout, the president of Nigeria set up a reform committee. What has happened in terms of the resolutions of that committee? We are now in the twilight of the government. There are several other blueprints. I know the NMA, for instance, has a blueprint on how to reform Nigerian health landscape. So what we need now is to please ask ourselves, where are we just now? Have we even treated these issues before? Because they are not new issues. And then what are the resolutions? We pick up those resolutions and more pragmatically seek to implement them. I think part of the challenge and the crisis of development in our country is the fact that we have not been able to courageously implement positions that will advance the prosperity of Nigerians and prosperity of the healthcare workers. So I think that rather than engage in a tough conversation, and that is why I'm appealing, that even this bill really is not enough to say because you have a right to present a bill, then everybody should be running around over a very defective, a very, very, unproductive, counterproductive bill. Nobody should be running around for that because you're going to waste resources. You're going to waste taxpayers' money.
Well, Dr. Nabolele,
so let us go back.
Yeah, let me ask you this. I mean, just yesterday it was revealed that the United Kingdom has placed Nigeria and 53 other countries on the red list of countries that should not be actively targeted for recruitment by health and social care employers. So whilst it is also true that, this bill might have been discriminatory, we also know that our country, alongside many others, have been targets for countries in the global north to seek recruitment, actively seeking recruitment of our healthcare workers. And it's not just the countries in the West, even countries like Saudi Arabia, organize exams or tests for our doctors here and medical practitioners, all manner of. How did you receive this? The fact that now we don't know what has informed this, but this is now what we're seeing, that the UK has now placed Nigeria and 53 other countries on the red list of countries that should not be actively targeted for recruitment by health and social care employers.
Yeah, thank you very much. Currently, as we speak now, Africa is in deficit in terms of health workforce of about 5.3 million. I mean, the whole world needs about between 15 to 18 million more healthcare workers to, of course, attend to its healthcare needs, to attain universal health coverage by 2030. And 2030 is just around the corner. And in all of this, Africa has more of the burden. Africa has about 25% of the global disease burden, but has only about less than 3% of the global health workforce. So Africa has more of the problems. And so you expect that African governments will, of course, put on their thinking caps to more transparently address the issue so that their workers will stay back home rather than go back to the countries of the global north. What the World Health Organization tried to do in 2010 was that, look, we also must not allow what is called global poaching. I mean, you have now a lot of global raiders, reading on low, middle-income countries because they have governments that have been, unable to address the existential realities facing their people. And so they use that opportunity, they exploit the vulnerabilities of these African economies, African governments to, poach their healthcare workforce. Why not also, be responsible in their own countries to produce more healthcare workers? In UK, for instance, today, a lot of doctors, a lot of practitioners are living for Australia and other countries that are even better than UK. So it's really ironical, that even people that because you're talking about the whole issue of international labor migration, the whole issue of the dynamics of the international markets. So people will move from a place they consider less attractive to a place more attractive. So the whole essence of the global code of practice, which came on board by virtue of resolution, the World Health Assembly Resolution 63.16, was to, of course, say, hey, can we take a break, for instance, and see how we can understand ourselves, how we can drive more responsibility on the part of governments of the global north, and also, more importantly, the part of governments of the global south, those in Africa, Asia, low middle-income countries that are not really responsible, that are not really responsive enough to addressing the issues that are challenging, the migration issues in their own environment. So this was to bring about what is called an ethical consensus, that, look, yes, we are not having enough in our country, in UK, in US, in Canada, and other places, but can we do it more responsibly? Can we, even as we recognize the rights of people to move anywhere they want to practice their profession, not actively poach on the resources of the low middle income countries? And even as the workers come over to us, can we also show more commitment to developing the environments in those countries that are challenged? But the question I ask is that, how has this been done? So it's not enough about passing resolution, because even this that has been so widely, noise abroad in terms of the new resolution for the UK, it doesn't even address the issue. What is important is that governments must be taken to account in terms of the level of engagement with the governments of the countries that are highly challenged in terms of health, human resource for health, to see how we can have a tracking modality to track how they are meeting up with their targets. Because the WHO has just come up with what is called the Global Health and Care Worker Compact. And that was passed in 2021, which of course rallies around 4 domains. Yeah, I mean, they talk about preventing harm to the healthcare workers, the issue of providing support for them, the issue of creating greater inclusivity, and of course safeguarding their rights, and investing preeminently in the well-being, the working conditions, and of course the safety of the healthcare workers. So these are issues that they can challenge this government to, of course, rise up to, and then have a tracking modality to see how they can meet up with it. So it's beyond just having a code of conduct or a code of practice in terms of the ethical recruitment policy of the World Health Organization. What I'd like to see is to see how we are even enforcing this to ensure that those governments that are really, really not rising up to the challenge, and I say this with all due respect to governments in Africa, including Nigeria, that they have a tracking modality to see how they are performing, to see how they are working, so that in areas where they need to be assisted more, they can be assisted rather than throwing resources into their environments that really cannot get anywhere. So, but more importantly, I think even the provisions of the National Health Act is so important to us to engage. The National Health Act has several resolutions, several provisions that seek to cure this kind of challenge that we're having. But how have our governments, including the superintendents of the health ministry, risen up to this? For instance, if you look at Section 45 and even other sections, you find out that there are clear provisions that talk about having a dynamic, strategic human resource development plan, and of course having resources channeled to it on a regular basis. But what has happened? Do we have reports on how this is being done? It is beyond just having papers on the table. But I think this is where I also implore the healthcare workers, including their organizations, to be a bit more proactive. Because we need to engage, there needs to be a conversation between the non-state actors and of course the government to see how we can together drive some level of simulacrum, some level of understanding to be able to, of course, prepare this to the next level. Things cannot just remain like this. Otherwise, we cannot address the whole issue of the brain drain phenomenon.
All right, Dr. Nabulele, thank you. We'll come back to you. Let's come back to Dr. Sununu. Dr. Nabulele is your colleague, and I'm sure you've had interactions with him over time. Apparently, both of you are more or less on the same page. But fortunately, you are in the midst of those who formulate these laws that would help to move our country forward. That bill is one. Some of the things that have been pointed out, for instance, Nigeria, according to the Nigerian Medical Association, has over 75,000 doctors registered with them. But of that 75,000, over 30,000 have already left the country. We're in deficit. He talked about a health professionals deficit on the African continent. But Nigeria, as it is, Nigeria needs at least 363,000 doctors to cover the entire country. But we have about less than 30,000 as we speak. This is not my data. This is your association's data. If we are going to move this country forward, especially our health sector, do you think it's possible to do that when the leaders in the country, most often than not, will go for medical attention outside of the country? Do you think any difference will happen?
Well, thank you very much. Let me just, for the purpose of correction, yes, I agree. Dr. Nabulele is my colleague, but to put the record straight forward, Dr. Nabulele is my mentor. He's my mentor. He has been...
When I say colleague, professional, yes, you're in the medical field
professional
together.
And professional politics and mentor. Okay. So let's just put it like that. So you see, actually, another correction is that the figure is not from Nigerian Medical Association. Nigerian Medical Association doesn't register doctors. It's the mandate, according to the Act,
Medical Council.
They established the council to register, to have a registrar and register doctors. So the figure exactly is coming from the Medical and Dental Council of Nigeria. And quite all right, as mentioned by Dr. Nabulele, it's not peculiar to only medical practitioners. I was shocked when I went for an oversight visit to the Nursing Council of Nigeria. In 1 month, we lost overseas 1,700 nurses in 1 month. That means almost getting 17 to 18,000 nurses in a month. And if you can recall, I mentioned here sometimes back that what we are having and what we are going to have may not likely even be a brain drain. And I call it a storm. You remember. And what is really, there are issues. You see, COVID has done so much damage to healthcare practice in the country. Over there, the number of casualties we have among healthcare practitioners is so much, and thereby creating a lot of vacancies. Coupled with the fact that they have the resources to fill in the gap, definitely they have to look at back, where are they going to? And Nigerian practitioners are one of the most resilient practitioners in the world. They can work under any hardship. If you look at how people operate with torchlight, which I have done also, you know, there is no country they can go that they cannot practice as medical practitioner. So we must have that impact. Now, if you look at providing care, definitely the number we have is grossly inadequate and it's not acceptable. Because where we're supposed to have a doctor to 6,000 population, and now we are talking to about 33,000. Burnout syndrome is a major issue in Nigeria. You understand? So you find that you go to general hospital, a doctor is the one running the clinic, is the one running the theater, and is the one taking calls 24 hours round the clock. So how do you think, and that's why sometimes people will say that patients were neglected. You come, a doctor is in the theater handling an emergency surgery, and you have your wife bleeding in the emergency room. Can he stop that surgery and come and attend to this? Definitely no, because the other patient is already under anesthesia, and he has already signed contract. So you understand? So the issue is, definitely we all know, everybody knows the way out. It's the holistic approach. But the only thing I think that is very, very vital to the current thinking of Mr. Vice President is to deviate from normal having a resolution, to have a legal framework that will back the implementation of such resolution. I think that's why the thought now to see whatever we have discussed there is being backed by law. And I think Mr. Vice President is working seriously to see how they can develop an executive bill to back the outcome of the Presidential Health Reform Committee.
It's already very late in the day. I mean, how quickly, I know we're going on break.
I can't say it's very late in the day. You see, lawmaking for something that you have deliberated and every Nigerian forwarded their input there, you cannot say it's late. We can have the law that can be implemented by the incoming regime. Don't also forget that in a normal government,
the fear is that,
in a normal government, you have memory line. And that's why we are this, because we are not using institutional memory. That's why the country is not moving forward.
Exactly. So when people have this fear that this is coming late in the day, you know, they have it with good reason. The fact that we know that we have very weak institutional memory, and that oftentimes work that has been done or finished in one assembly might not be carried over into the next, and that if bills do not pass in a particular assembly, sometimes they have to start from scratch all over again.
I don't think if we have the 10th assembly as vibrant as 9th assembly, that will happen. We have inherited so many controversial bills from the 8th assembly, even from 6th, 7th, and 8th assembly, of which we have worked on them, we have seen the light of the day. So I think that institutional memory is there. Now, if you combat
now... please just hold your thoughts. Yes. We'll take a moment, we'll come back and pick up from institutional memory and how that would affect the health sector in a moment. Do stay with us. Welcome back. We're looking at the healthcare sector in Nigeria and how that's being worked out vis-a-vis that bill being proposed in the National Assembly to give certificates to medical practitioners only after they've served 5 years in Nigeria after graduation. Dr. Sununu is here with us, Chairman House of Reps Committee on Healthcare Services and former Secretary General of the Nigerian Medical Association. Also joining us virtually is former President of the Nigerian Medical Association, now President World Medical Association, Dr. Osaho and Nabulele. Thank you both for being here with us. Dr. Sununu, you were talking about institutional memory, but talking about institutions there, let's look at how is it that there is no bill, or it's not out there that a bill was proposed in the first place that no public servant should leave Nigeria while in service for medical attention outside the country. Was there such a bill, and what happened to it?
Well, there was a bill, but the bill could not pass. That's this. Sorry, a correction. Let me just add it that my mentor is also immediate past president of Commonwealth Medical Association. Okay. And I think he's one of the Nigerians that we are proud of. He has gone far. I think he was our youngest president of Nigerian Medical Association.
Dr.
The youngest
is our friend.
President of the World Medical Association. So I congratulate my mentor. Okay. Well, the bill was presented, but it could not see the light of day, just like many other bills.
How many readings did that bill go through? Did it go through a second reading, or it died after the first reading?
No, I think it died after the, a bill hardly mentioned died after first reading, except if the sponsor step it down. Because first reading is just mentioning. It's for the clerk to read the permission of the speaker that so bill has been presented for the first reading, and that's all. And it's the second reading that you now look at it, the pros and cons of that bills. And then
so
the argument.
That bill didn't go through the second reading?
Yes, to my knowledge, it hasn't passed the second reading, so it hasn't come to
but this
any
bill,
committee for
this bill to give certificates to medical Nigerians who were studied here has gone through the second reading.
It has gone through the second reading. So even when I was even outside the country when it has gone for the second reading.
So one would now wonder Nigerians are reacting, and even the Nigerian, the the doctors are rejecting it outrightly. Yes. I mean, if that bill that should say, hello, public servant, you can't go anywhere. If you want, while you're serving the public, you should use the facilities that you provide for the public. If that will not even go through a first reading, why should this one even go through a second reading?
You see, absolutely, for me, as an individual, I will support that. You understand? But you cannot also deny people completely from going outside, because we have certain defects. And that defect is that the services, which I've mentioned earlier, cannot address all the issues. And even in developing countries, at developed worlds, people move from one country to another. But where the case becomes serious is when you try to take advantage of your country, to exploit the resources of government to take care of yourself. You understand? But even then, we have a provision right now that calls for the constitution of medical board. Understand? Where in the interest of the patient and the country, it cannot be served properly. The Minister of Health or the State Commissioner of Health is allowed to constitute a board of medical experts that will critically look at the situations. And I affirm that really it cannot be addressed within the country. And as such, you cannot allow that individual to die like that. You can't sponsor him to go. You understand? But there's nowhere, I think, to my knowledge, that you can just go into the post, dip your hand and carry your money.
Let me take this. Dr. Nabulele, maybe you should weigh in on this, because you have been, as a president of Nigerian Medical Association, you were quite vocal about the situation of the medical situation. And during your period, there were times when the NMA went, the doctors went on strike several times. So this question of the bill for public servants not to leave the country for medical attention outside, and then you were the one that also mentioned the kind of things that are needed here for the practitioners to even find space to work. What do you think should happen as we speak?
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate again my good brother, Honorable Tanko Yusuf Sununu. I wish we had, my hope is that we have more of Sununos in the House of Representatives, because he understands the issues. Now, clearly, there is what he tried to, reference. I mean, he referenced Section 46 of the National Health Act, which was more like a compromise provision when we tried to, of course, seek this proposal that you just stated, in terms of how can we prevent reckless abuse of the resources of our country, in terms of the taxpayers' resources, which was part of what was resulting in the humongous capital flights that we saw in 2012 and 2013, when we raised the alarm over the spending of over $1 billion, as at that time in 2012, for medical tourism, largely traceable to the very reckless expenditures in terms of obstacles and all of that by officers of government. So Section 46 now was a compromise version in the National Health Act, which was enacted during the time of President Goodluck Ebele Jonathan, that said that, look, as a public officer, you cannot, go outside the shores of Nigeria to seek medical care or to even go for any investigation. Because some officers of government just go for blood pressure measurements in France, in Spain, and some other countries. And the bill has said, look, you cannot do that. You cannot use government resources unless it has been so certified by a medical board that this is a dire emergency, a dire need, where the facilities are not in country for such, investigations or treatment. And of course, it is, at the whims and of course this discretion of the medical board that is going to be set up at both the federal level and the state level before you are granted permission, to go for such medical treatment plans or journeys, with perhaps some support by government. But the question is, how many years from 2014 now that provision has been on ground? This has not been observed by even those who enacted this provision. I do not want to go into some details because we all know as Nigerians what has been happening since 2014 when this Section 46 came into being. So this has not even been, so I think the first starting point is to say, can we even raise some level of, support or re-energize the implementation of this provision, Section 46, at the state and at the federal level? Because we all know that this is still being abused. So that bill that, of course, was brought again to the House of Representatives, like you stated, it was summarily decimated within the conference of the House of Representatives. So that is to say, do we really have the right priorities in mind? It calls to question our priority for healthcare. And that is why we questioned even this bill that just got proposed by a member of the House of Representatives, because it clearly shows a self-enlightened interest, not necessarily, to the interests of Nigerians and to the interests of the health workforce and quality healthcare dispensation. So clearly, there is a time in which we also have to come back again to see how we can more ethically and more responsibly attend to the issues of healthcare in our country and say, look, can we make some sacrifices, even as government officers, even as workers, within, the Nigerian environment, to see how we can more indigenously, drive our healthcare institutions in a way that can produce some better health outcomes rather than filtering the resources away on account of medical tourism. I wrote a paper that was published in the World Medical Journal, looking at the COVID-19 pandemic and how that perhaps for the first time got some government officials to realize how deficient their healthcare system was, not only in Nigeria, but in many parts of Africa. We had the Secretary of the Government of Federation state, surprisingly, that it was knowing for the very first time how decadent the Nigerian healthcare landscape was. COVID closed the doors for international travel, but I wrote a paper and I tried to, of course, interrogate a very fundamental hypothesis, as to whether this was just a temporary reprieve or whether it was going to sink into the consciousness of those who are the superintendents of our sovereignty, the superintendents of the healthcare environment. And I said, look, I am not going to be surprised if this is reversed the moment the international gates are open. And even before the international gates were open, we saw what happened. People were already junketing, the government officials were already junketing to Europe, to America and others in search of healthcare. So it looked like it was just, some, what I would call some, pretense, if you may use that terminology, with due respect, and not really substantial realization of the need to transparently upscale, the whole issue of the healthcare environment, because health is wealth. If you deny the people of healthcare, quality healthcare, then of course you have denied your people their prosperity, their well-being.
Dr. Nabulele, so that's the question right now. You say if we deny the people of healthcare, and yes, healthcare is extremely comprehensive. It is a total package, but a significant part of that package is our healthcare professionals. If right now we are in dire straits with our healthcare professionals leaving in droves, and this is not just in government hospitals, this is also in private institutions where consultants are finding finding it very difficult to find resident doctors or to even employ, I don't know if there's any term like junior doctors, but those who are not yet consultants in their services. Shouldn't we be doing something to stop the bleeding that we're currently experiencing in that particular sector?
Yeah, thank you very much. That is very germane. I mean, clearly we recognize that there is need for us to engage this in a more realistic terms. And I think that is why we talk about a comprehensive approach to the issue of brain drain. And I recall again the very fundamental effort made by the then military head of state. It was a military head of state, General Ibrahim Badamasu Babangida. He set up a platform that looked comprehensively at the issues that were confronting the health landscape. That is what we need to do again now. Dust up the resolutions that have been passed in times past. Look at the current situation in terms of the existential realities, especially the whole challenge of insecurity, the whole challenge of violence against the health workforce, and see what more we can do to come up with a more comprehensive, proposal to, of course, address substantially most of these issues in the short term, in the medium term, and in the long term. And preeminently, how do we bring about, build a more resilient health system with resilient health workforce, addressing the whole issue of their well-being, the whole issue of decent working conditions, the whole issue of security and safety, in the workplace, and of course have some level of accountability frameworks on how we are doing this. I've always said, as a member of the negotiation team of the Nigerian Medical Association for many years, that look, I always had this premonition that whatever we're doing was not going to be enduring, because government always failed to realize the need to tag, for instance, the remuneration of healthcare workers with inflationary trends. Soon after you place a new salary dispensation, of course the economy goes haywire. And what you thought you were doing in good faith becomes something that is very ridiculous and pitiable. So how do we engage the economic indices in a way that makes even whatever we are doing now more enduring, rather than always provoking organizations to go on strike, long strikes, for instance, to, of course, ensure that their security, their well-being, their welfare is better protected. I think there's level for us, there's room for us to bring out some accountability frameworks, some performance tracking frameworks that will be all-encompassing, that will include even those who are providing these services in terms of the health members of the health workforce, to see how we can, better drive a roadmap to bring about a collective prosperity, not only of the health workforce, but of course of Nigerians. Because the whole essence of healthcare is for Nigerians to have better quality, healthcare arrangements in place in terms of advancing the whole concept of universal health coverage. So I think, therefore, that it is for us to be able to, of course, galvanize a more sincere approach to looking at these issues, fundamentally addressing the whole issue of decent working conditions, the whole issue of wages for the healthcare workforce. Because once you give them attractive, incentives, and that comes to the issue of retentive mechanisms that we have in our country. What the healthcare workers want is nothing more than just basic, tools to make them more comfortable to practice their profession, to make them able to feel secured in their workplace, to make them able to say that, look, we can also provide for our families. We can also provide for our well-being. And that was why, if you look at paragraph 11 of the new Physicians' Pledge, because again, we did not want the Hippocratic Oath, what then was the Hippocratic Oath, to become like a sword of Damocles, dangling on the necks of African physicians and Nigerian physicians. We said, look, let us also let them understand that there's a place for them to also look after their well-being and welfare. And that was the beginning of the emergence of paragraph 11, which has now given them this impression that, look, they are not there to, of course, be consigned to the gallows in the course of rendering healthcare, but also to make sure that government and the system and place mechanisms to also protect them so that they can offer what we call uninterrupted quality healthcare services. So how do we drive this compact? And that brings me again to the whole new proposition by the World Health Organization. And like I said, I just came back from the 5th Global Forum on Human Resources for Health, where all these issues came to the table, coordinated by the Director General of the World Health Organization, the very eminent, the very progressive Dr. Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus. And they formulated, in fact, they've launched the Global Health and Care Worker Compact. So what I'll be pushing, even in this discussion, is for the Nigerian government and other governments in Africa to take up the Global Health and Care Worker Compact and see how they can more pragmatically, in addition to their own national, local, proposals or propositions, see how they can more comprehensively and holistically engage these issues of decent working conditions, the well-being of the health workforce, the quality of care rendered to patients, the resilience of the healthcare system, and of course also bring on place protective mechanisms for guaranteeing the sustainability of these frameworks.
All right, let me come to Dr. Sununu now, because we're almost out of time. I'm going to be asking you to, wrap up your thoughts as well, perhaps with this question. When Professor Tamori was speaking at the beginning of this discussion, he said something about how this is like discrimination against health workers. They're not the only ones who are leaving the country. But the truth of the matter is our health workers are extremely valuable, obviously. And that's why you find countries, even before the UK passed this, actively coming to recruit our own medical workers. I mean, they are highly sought after. So the question is, isn't it possible for us to enact positively discriminatory laws? Because I know that this has caused some rancor in the past, whereby, maybe health workers are agitating for something, they're granted, and then you now see people within other sectors going on strike as a result of what has been granted health workers. Do you think that we can, press it home that because of where we currently are and the fact that everybody is valuable, but we must recognize that some are more valuable than others. Is it possible for us to say that this will be an opportunity to impress upon all of us just what we need to put in place to ensure that we protect our healthcare sector and also ensure the welfare of our healthcare workers?
Yes, it is possible, but when you use the word discriminatory, no matter how positive it is, that being discriminatory is against the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, so it cannot be justified. But you can prioritize and give preferential treatment based on the needs of the country and to address the ongoing situation
that is
militating.
That's a positive word for discrimination. Preferential treatment.
And it has been practiced all over in the country. Look at it. If you look at even the core civil service as it is now, you can talk of different salary scales. Why are people moving? There are people, when you ask them, move to NPA, they will live where they are. Move to Federal Revenue, they live where, and they go where they are. You understand? And even in the medical practice, we have so many ideas. We have commerce, we have coinhead salary scales. You understand? These are all done in order to address the peculiarities of that institution or organization or services being rendered so as to make it effective. Now, we can make it effective because the more we refuse or the more we continue to overlook what is happening, definitely it will reach a level that nobody will want to go to even our university teaching hospital. Let me tell you, let's ask a common question now. All of us here, the next door to our own, we have primary health centers. And if I ask you, have you ever been to primary health center next to your door? You haven't done. And you will not, because the confidence is not there. So we need to introduce confidence of people, to have confidence in healthcare facilities so that they can go there too. And you cannot do that without holistic approach healthcare services so that all the pillars of health have been addressed one after the other. And once that is done, and that is what I mentioned earlier. Yes, so many reforms, even in the current reform committee, we have reviewed virtually the document. You'll be shocked to know that virtually all the issues we were addressing, they were there. But only that what makes it more prominent now is that the insecurity in the country. And this we have all put together. But the issue is, once you have a reform that is not backed by law, that reform is not likely to work. But if you have a time will come when you have somebody that will implement it. Dr. Nablele mentioned the National Health Act. Now, it was passed, but it wasn't implemented immediately. The implementation has to take another fight. I was also the Secretary General when we fought CRDC, but it was even the Basic Healthcare Provision Fund. It is this regime that have started to implement that. And even now, if you ask me, definitely, do we need really a reform? I would say yes, no, because the National Health Act 2014 has almost addressed virtually more than 90% of healthcare problem in Nigeria.
But where we are, it's not addressing the brain drain. Yeah,
it's implemented. It addressed manpower issues. You understand? So the issue is, we always want to have a partial implementations of a lot of provisions in the Act. If we can holistically address the issue, We'll address it definitely. But definitely, we either work or we wait to see what happens, and that will not be in the best interest of the country. The market is opening. The market is opening because of impact of COVID world over.
We'll certainly keep tabs on this particular bill. You say that the House is currently on recess. It'll be back on the 2nd of May, that's correct?
Yes.
And that's when you'll be able to fix a date for the public hearing of this particular bill.
Exactly.
And you're guaranteeing Nigerians that they will be very well informed ahead of time to be able to make their input into this particular bill.
Let me tell you, as far as I'm concerned, there is no bill that has come to my committee that has not been subjected to public hearing.
Oh, no. I'm not saying that there's been a bill that has. I'm just saying that people will, because there's some bills that, the public hearing is going to be the following day, and it's the day before that people are aware, or the day before that people are being notified.
No.
Are you giving Nigerians the guarantee that you will give them sufficient notice on the public hearing of this bill?
Definitely, we are going to give enough time. Based on their existences, definitely it cannot be less than 10 days.
Okay, so at this point you have to say thank you.
To know that the bill
it will not be less than 10 days. I certainly will be holding you to that. So, Dr. Nabulele, I imagine that you will also be following very closely this particular bill, and you will certainly be making your thoughts very clear at the public hearing when it happens.
Certainly, I'll be there. I'll be there by the grace of God. But let me also advise that rather than waste taxpayers' resources to convoke a public hearing, it is clear that this bill certainly is not a bill that we need at this time. I think we should encourage a member to please reflect again and also educate himself through research and through engagement with stakeholders, and know that, look, rather than waste taxpayers' resources to galvanize people from all parts of Nigeria and even from outside, because I'm likely going to come from outside Nigeria, let's see how we can more holistically, sincerely, and transparently look at what really are the existential issues.
Well, I think with due respect, together, sir, yes. The bill is no more, the sponsor is no more in the ownership of the bill now. Okay, fine. Whoever is the owner of the bill, they appeal and make it. We have to subject it to rather than just like the bill trying to stop public officers from, members of the House of Rep and others from going abroad was killed at the point in time in the House of Representatives. We have seen these things done. So rather than waste taxpayers' resources, part of what we have not been doing, Mark, is that we have not been able to look at the pros and cons, the consequences of what we do in Nigeria. And so we waste money, we get nothing out of it. Nigeria has lost so much, and they will come back again on a roller coaster drive, to do the same thing again another year. So my appeal is that now that we have all agreed that we have enough resolutions, even within the confines of the National Health Act, can we please, draw back on any kind of proposal, that really doesn't speak well of even our own architecture as representatives, because I expect, when you see a representative present a bill, it's a bill that should be, very well researched. With all due respect, this was not a bill that was well researched.
Dr. Nabulele,
to be withdrawn.
Dr. Nabulele, I have to say thank you at this point in time. Thank you for sharing your thoughts with us, and we do hope that National Assembly, when they do return, the House of Representatives will look at this and get it sorted out once and for all. Thank you, Dr. Osahoe Nabulele is the President, World Medical Association, and former President, Nigerian Medical Association, and former President, Commonwealth Medical Association. You've been quite a number of presidents there. Congratulations again. Thank you for joining us this morning. And in our Abuja studio, we had Dr. Yusuf Tanko Sununu, Chairman, House of Representatives Committee on Healthcare Services, and a member representing Ngaski Shanga Yauri Federal Constituency, Kebbi State. Thank you. Thank you for coming in this morning.
You have not congratulated me.
Oh, congratulations as well. Thank you. Sunrise Day will be back in a moment. And today is World Parkinson's Day. That's what we'll be looking at next. Don't go away.